Look at your last grocery receipt. Now look at the night sky over the Middle East. Mainstream media wants you to think these two things have absolutely nothing to do with each other. CNN and Fox News will show you shiny interceptor missiles lighting up the dark, painting a picture of the hegemon, flexing its military muscle overseas. What they will not show you is the invisible string tying that $2 million interceptor directly to the price of your ground beef in Ohio. You are being told that your shrinking paycheck is just a domestic hangover, that it is just a glitch from the money printer running too hot for too long. But hold on, let us follow the money for a second. What if I told you the armed conflict between Washington, Israel, and Iran is not just some distant foreign policy issue? What if it is actually a weaponized logistics game, strategically designed to bleed out the American consumer? Yet every cheap drone shot down over the Red Sea is acting as a silent tax on the middle class. And while you are stressing over your credit card bill just to keep the lights on, the insiders on Wall Street are absolutely cashing in. Forget the religious or ideological narratives Capitol Hill sells you about the Middle East. If you want to understand this game, you have to look at a map. This chessboard is entirely about geography and logistics. The players are Washington, Israel, Iran, and various regional proxy groups. But the real prize they are fighting over? The water. We are talking about the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. These are not just random bodies of water on the other side of the planet. They are the absolute jugular veins of global trade. Almost 30% of all global container traffic and massive chunks of the world oil supply have to squeeze through these extremely narrow gaps. This is what macroeconomists call a choke point. And if you have the power to disrupt a choke point, you have the power to strangle the global economy. When the U.S. Navy deploys multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier strike groups to the region, it is not just some noble quest to protect allies or spread freedom. That is the marketing pitch they give you on the evening news. The cold, hard reality is that the hegemon is terrified. Yet Washington knows that any prolonged kinetic action in these waters will completely weaponize the supply chain against the West. Iran and its proxy networks know they cannot win a direct, conventional showdown with American firepower. But here is the genius part. They do not need to. They just need to make those shipping lanes too risky to navigate. By doing that, they are quietly cutting off the flow of cheap goods and energy that keeps the American lifestyle afloat. Now, let us follow the money for a second. Who actually pays the price when a major maritime corridor turns into a shooting gallery? It is certainly not the politicians sitting comfortably on Capitol Hill. When the geopolitical temperature spikes, global shipping cartels panic. They look at the skyrocketing war risk insurance premiums required just to transit the Red Sea, and they realize it is a losing mathematical equation. So, they make a drastic move. They reroute thousands of massive cargo vessels thousands of miles out of the way, sending them all the way down and around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. This is not just a minor traffic jam, you guys. We are talking about adding 10 to 15 extra days of transit time to every single voyage. We are talking about burning millions of dollars in extra bunker fuel per ship. The global supply of shipping containers suddenly shrinks because everything is stuck on the water for an extra 2 weeks. Freight rates explode from $1,500 a box to $4,000 or $5,000 overnight. And do you honestly think the billionaire executives on Wall Street are going to just eat those massive logistical losses out of the goodness of their hearts? Absolutely not. They pass every single cent of that massive geopolitical detour directly down to you at the checkout counter. Washington claims they are projecting power and securing the region, but the reality is completely upside down. By failing to stabilize that vital artery, the United States government is allowing adversaries to successfully weaponize geography against the American citizen. The powers in the Middle East have figured out that they can literally export inflation straight into the American heartland without ever setting foot on our soil. Every extra mile those cargo ships have to sail to avoid a kinetic action translates into a higher price tag for everything you buy, from the microchips in your vehicle to the fertilizer used to grow your food. It is a terrifyingly brilliant strategy from the other side of the chessboard. They do not have to defeat the US military in a direct fight. They just have to bleed out our supply chains until the American middle class collapses under the weight of basic survival. You are paying a hidden, devastating tax for a foreign policy failure, and the establishment is hoping you never figure out the math. Let us talk about the FED for a second. You see Jerome Powell on television talking about interest rates. You're trying to cool down the economy because the money printer was left running hot for way too long. But here is the brutal truth. The mainstream financial media completely ignores. You can hike interest rates to 7, 8, even 10%. But Jerome Powell cannot print more oil. The Federal Reserve cannot magically teleport cargo ships safely through a war zone. When adversaries weaponize these maritime chokepoints, they completely bypass the American central banking system. They are injecting inflation directly into the physical economy. It does not matter if domestic demand drops because no one can afford anything. The cost to simply move a physical good from point A to point B has skyrocketed, and that means the baseline price of everything, from your morning coffee to the lumber needed to build a house, gets artificially inflated by a geopolitical standoff thousands of miles away. And this is where the math gets incredibly dark for the American middle class. Because this imported inflation is so incredibly stubborn, the FED is forced to keep interest rates painfully high. They are terrified of dropping rates while global supply chains are an absolute mess. So what does that mean for you? It means mortgage rates stay locked in the stratosphere. It means the 20-something trying to buy a starter home is completely boxed out of the American dream. It means the family living paycheck to paycheck in the Rust Belt is having their purchasing power absolutely eviscerated. They are being forced to vote with their wallets every single time they step foot in a grocery store, and the choices are getting incredibly grim. People are maxing out credit cards just to buy eggs and milk, while Washington plays global policeman. You are literally paying for this entire geopolitical chessboard twice. I want you to really think about it. First, the government takes a massive chunk of your paycheck to fund the military-industrial complex. You are paying for those $2 million interceptor missiles that the U.S. Navy is firing off like Roman candles in the Middle East. And then, because that kinetic action creates massive chaos and reroutes global trade, you pay the exact same tax a second time at the Walmart checkout line. It is the ultimate scheme of socializing losses and privatizing profits. The defense contractors get their massive government contracts renewed. The global shipping cartels jack up their freight rates and report absolute record earnings, and you are left holding an empty bag. Wall Street gets a backdoor bailout funded by perpetual crisis, while Main Street is left to bleed out slowly. No politician on Capitol Hill is going to lose their home because a container ship had to sail around Africa, but a working-class family in Ohio absolutely will. Meanwhile, on the other side of the chessboard, the adversaries of Washington are playing a completely different game. The mainstream media paints the Middle East as chaotic and disorganized, but what is actually happening is a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. You do not need $1 trillion defense budget to fight the U.S. military anymore. You do not need massive aircraft carriers. All you need is a $20,000 drone built from cheap commercial parts, and you can force the United States Navy to fire a $2 million interceptor missile just to knock it out of the sky. Do that math for a second. That is not a military strategy. That is a financial strategy. The powers backing these proxy groups have realized that they cannot beat the United States in a direct firefight. So they decided to pivot. They decided to strangle the global logistics network instead. Their grand strategy is not to conquer territory or win massive set-piece battles. Their absolute primary goal is simply to export inflation directly into the American homeland. They are watching the hegemon slowly bleed out financially. Every single time, Capitol Hill authorizes another massive strike package or sends another multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier strike group to patrol the Red Sea. The adversaries just smile, because they know that America is caught in a trap of its own making. The United States is being forced into a vicious cycle of spending billions of taxpayer dollars to swat away incredibly cheap technology, while the resulting chaos in the shipping lanes rips the domestic economy apart. This is the grim reality of the 21st century global order. America is not being defeated militarily on a battlefield. It is being bankrupted logistically on a spreadsheet. The old guard in Washington is still trying to play the geopolitical game using outdated rules from the 1990s, while the rest of the world has figured out how to weaponize time, distance, and basic supply and demand against the American empire. They are literally using our massive, overextended military footprint as a liability. They know that if they just keep the pot boiling, if they just keep those critical choke points completely unpredictable, the resulting economic anxiety will do more damage to the USA than any foreign army ever could. So the next time you pull up to the gas station or stare at your dwindling savings account, I want you to ask yourself a really hard question. What exactly are we securing over there? The politicians love to tell us that freedom is not free, but it sure is profitable for a very specific group of people. While the middle class is getting crushed by a silent tax on the middle class every time they buy groceries, the insiders on Wall Street and the defense contractors are handing out massive quarterly bonuses. Are we really defending the free world, or are we just the ones being forced to bail out a broken system so Capitol Hill can keep pretending to be the hegemon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is actually winning this geopolitical chess match? Because it sure as hell is not the American taxpayer.